thank you, Paul, for that kind introduction. Nya Zhong, Sabadi Ton Lang, ข้าพเจ้ามีความยินดีหลายที่ได้มีโอกาสมาพบปะกับบรรดาท่านอยู่ที่นี่ Really delighted to be here tonight to have the opportunity to speak with you and the opportunity to interact with many of you in events earlier in the day. I'd first like to thank all the people who have worked so hard on organizing not only this event but my entire schedule today, including the governor's office and Sia Her, who worked tirelessly on this program, to Commissioner Kevin Lindsay, who was so kind to accompany me for most of the day as the governor's representative. Also to the sponsors of this organization, the businesses in the Hmong American community here, and to the Lao and Hmong communities here for giving me such a warm welcome. It's been truly a delight here to spend the day with you. So what I'd like to do tonight is to talk briefly about my time in Laos, offer a few observations about the country based on my time there, describe the state of U.S.-Lao relations and U.S. policy toward the Lao PDR, and conclude with saying a few words about the role that you all can play in the economic and social development of Laos. So as Paul pointed out, I've been in Laos now for about a year and a half, and normally ambassadors serve a 3-year tour. So if Paul's accounting is correct, and I'm sure it is, I'm one day over the halfway mark of my service as ambassador to the Lao PDR. I've been in the Foreign Service now for 30 years. I guess it will be 30 years next month in April, and I can say that Laos is the favorite post of both my wife and I. It's a beautiful country. As you know, the people are wonderful, sweet, friendly people, and they have a lot. I think they have a lot to teach people of the United States and people of the rest of the world about the way to approach life. Because I've traveled extensively in Laos. I've visited 16 of the 18 provinces so far. I'll visit the 17th next month, and the 18th the month after. And I can say wherever we go and however poor the people are in the villages, especially in the remote areas, they are happy people. And they're able to be happy even though they don't have all the material possessions that many people elsewhere, including in the United States, focus on. They kind of understand the way to approach life, so that's something that I've taken away. A few observations about the country after a year and a half there. One is the economic growth. So for the past several years, it's been the fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia, growing faster than Vietnam or Thailand or Singapore or Malaysia. At about 8% growth over the last several years. It's been a growth that has been based largely on resource extraction and hydropower. I think that that will need to change just because that's not a sustainable strategy for economic growth. There's only so many mines you can develop and only so many dams you can build, and that's the end of your economic growth in those sectors. So looking forward, there's 3 potential areas for economic growth. One is manufacturing, another is tourism, and the third is agricultural processing. And I think Minnesota can help them in that, certainly in that third category with all the experience you have, for example, in livestock raising and processing. On the manufacturing front, there's a real interesting development in the city of Savannakhet in central Laos, where they've established a special economic zone that has attracted quality foreign investment. Toyota recently opened up a factory there in Savannakhet, manufacturing car seats to be used in automobiles that are assembled in Thailand. Nikon, the Japanese camera company, has opened up an assembly factory there and wants to bring more of its supply chain with it. There's a French optical lens company, a Dutch company that makes parts for Boeing and Airbus, so on and so forth. And the companies that are coming there aren't looking to Laos as a market to sell their goods, and the country is very small, only 6 million people, so it's a very small market for a multinational firm. But they realize the potential of Laos as a place to access the wider ASEAN market. And this year, the ASEAN countries are supposed to establish the ASEAN Economic Community. So these companies are a little bit ahead of the curve in recognizing the potential to sell into other countries in Southeast Asia from a base in Laos. And later this year, Coca-Cola will join their ranks, opening up a bottling plant outside of Vientiane, which will supply the Lao market, but will also supply much of Thailand. And the infrastructure that joins Laos to these other countries is improving. The roads are getting better every year. At this point, it's maybe a 9-hour drive from Savannakhet to Da Nang in Vietnam, which is an international port from which goods can be exported to anywhere in the world. At the same time, the rural areas of the country are very, very poor. There's a big income disparity between cities like Savannakhet and Vientiane and the rural areas. And recently I traveled to some northern provinces, including Udom Sai and Luang Nam Ta, and the villages there are very, very different from Vientiane. Just one example, we visited a school in Luang Nam Ta province where the students have to board at the school during the week because they live so far from the school. But they're living basically in bamboo shacks with maybe twice the size of this open area that have 60 girls living on basically shelves on either side of the central aisle. Last observation is that it's a very, very young country, and in that respect, different from other countries in Asia, different from China, different from Japan. 70% of the country is under age 30. 50%, one half of the country is under age 20. And so that means 70% of the country was born 10 years after the war ended, and 10 years after your families left the country for the United States. On bilateral relations and U.S. policy, it's in the U.S. interest to ensure that Laos does not become overly dependent on any single country for its economic growth and is able to act independently and in its own interest on political matters. So our goal in working in Laos is to be a trusted and reliable partner and an option to Laos, to the other powerful countries who are trying to exert their influence there. So to achieve that goal, we are building a new relationship for the 21st century while we continue to address the legacies of the 20th century. And by the legacies of the 20th century, I mean in our work, continuing the effort to account for American personnel missing from the war in Laos. There were a total of 525 Americans who are missing in action in Laos, and we've accounted for roughly 220 of those, and we have some 300 to still account for. And we appreciate the cooperation of the government of Laos in that search. It couldn't be, the effort obviously could not be done without them. The other big legacy from the war is unexploded ordnance, especially anti-personnel weapons from the war that did not explode as they were supposed to do, and until recently were causing over 300 casualties per year, mainly in children who were picking up the old weapons and playing with them, and then would be either killed or maimed by the explosions. So we recently raised our assistance in clearing unexploded ordnance from $5 million a year to $9 million a year to $12 million a year, and I think this coming year we'll raise it again to $13 million per year. In building a new relationship for the 20th century, we're cooperating in a broad range of areas. Education is one area where we have a program funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, where we provide snacks, midday snacks at schools, which is a program designed to increase school attendance, because many of the poor children, without this program, if they went to school, they would not eat all day long. And so that's obviously a big disincentive to going to school. And with this program, which involves giving them basically kind of a cake of corn and soy mixed with oil and sugar and coconut and bananas, which is very nutritious, we've been able to increase school attendance rates from in the 60th percentile up into the 90th percentile. We're also beginning this year a child nutrition program that'll be run by USAID, at least $6 million over 2 years, which is designed to address the very serious problem of stunting and child malnutrition in the Lao PDR. Laos has one of the highest stunting rates in the world. 44% of children under 5 are stunted. That means they're too short for their age, which also affects their strength and their mental abilities. And in remote regions, the percentage is as high as 65% of children who are stunted. Not only because of lack of food, but also because of poor water and sanitation and cultural practices that need to be changed regarding the feeding of babies. We're also working in the environmental field, especially on the issue of hydropower, which has received a lot of attention recently. Laos has an ambition to be the battery of Southeast Asia, to provide electricity to the rest of Southeast Asia, and they're already doing that, providing electricity especially to Thailand and earning the revenue from the sale of the electricity. But dams have downstream effects on food security. If they're not designed properly, they can trap sediment that's needed for agriculture downstream. They can block the migration of fish that's required for the fishing downstream. So Laos neighbors, Cambodia and Vietnam, are both very concerned about the construction of dams in Laos, and we're providing assistance to the Lao government to expert assistance in areas like sedimentation and fisheries in order to minimize those downstream impacts on the neighboring countries. We have a very good relationship in the area of health. The Defense Department is building both schools and hospitals in especially eastern part of the country where we're still conducting MIA operations. We have a close relationship with the Ministry of Health, and the Minister of Health visited the United States in last September, and met with the Director of the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta and with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and returned to Laos very impressed with the health care capacity of the United States and wants to cooperate more, including he has a vision of a Lao-American hospital, friendship hospital, in Vientiane, which we're trying to work with him to realize. We also co-chaired with Laos a very important meeting in February of this year in Pak Se with the other lower Mekong countries, Thailand, Cambodia, and Myanmar, as well as development partners, the donor countries and organizations, to try to reach a consensus and a path forward on infrastructure development in the lower Mekong and the effect of the development of infrastructure like dams on energy and water and food security. And as a result of that meeting, I think the Lao walked away convinced that we could be supportive partners with them in that effort, and the other countries appreciated the opening of a dialogue on an issue where the Lao government had sometimes avoided consultation. But at the same time, we worked to create a new partnership for the 21st century. We continue to monitor human rights situation, religious freedom, and labor conditions, and we publish annual reports to the Congress on these and other topics. We speak out about human rights violations when they occur, including the disappearance of the NGO activist Sambat Sampon 2 years ago. And we also work with the Laos Supreme Court, the Supreme Public Prosecutor, and the Ministry of Public Security to develop the institutions of the rule of law. The government has a self-professed goal to be a rule of law state by 2020, which is an interesting goal because it contains an implicit admission that they're not a rule of law state now, which is true. But it does have this goal. When I made the initial round of courtesy calls, the heads of all these institutions, including one who's a member of the Politburo, all asked for U.S. assistance and training and technical assistance to help them achieve this goal. So that's a way over the medium to long term to move the country to away from an arbitrary system of justice that existed in the past to one that's more governed by the rule of law and affords due process to its citizens. Finally, let me talk a little bit about the very positive role that you all could play. Laos has another goal for 2020, and that is to graduate from least developed country status, which is a classification in the international community of the very poorest countries in the world who are, as a result of being so poor, are entitled to certain kinds of preferential treatment in terms of grants and loan terms and so forth. But Laos wants to graduate from that club, and which has certain benefits, but has the very big downside of being very, very poor. So they want to graduate from that club to become more economically and socially developed, but they have a way to go. And in my view, one great untapped resource is the Lao American community, the Hmong American community here in the United States. Laos is, as I mentioned before, a small country, only 6 million people. There's 600,000 Lao Americans here, which is 10% of the population of Laos is here in the United States, and quite a few of them are here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And this is a potential great resource. And let me just quote from you a little bit from a speech that Secretary of State Clinton gave in 2012 to the second annual Global Diaspora Forum, and when she spoke about the role of communities like yours. So she said that diaspora communities have enormous potential to help solve problems and create opportunities in their countries of origin, because we believe that, as the title of this conference, the second annual Diaspora Forum, says we can move forward by giving back, by tapping into the experiences, the energy, the expertise of diaspora communities. We can reverse the so-called brain drain that slows progress in so many countries around the world. Instead, offer the benefits of the brain gain. So I know that many of you are already playing such roles in Laos, going back and trying to get involved in the business community there, which I know is not always an easy task. But I would encourage more of you to become engaged in this way. You have a lot to contribute. You've accomplished incredible things in your short time in the United States. I think I mentioned to some of you that we actually have two Lao Americans working in the U.S. Embassy in Vientiane now. Second generation Lao Americans. One is my assistant, and one is a young man who left Laos when he was a year old. He lived in Pak-se. His parents took him to Thailand. He spent 5 years in a refugee camp, settled first in Amarillo, Texas, moved to California, and ended up going to Georgetown University, received a doctorate in public health at Johns Hopkins University, is now running the regional malaria program for USAID in Southeast Asia. So you as a community have a tremendous amount you can contribute, both to the United States, here in this community here in St. Paul and Minneapolis, where you're making a very huge contribution, and to your original country, your home country, Laos. So with that, I would just say Kop Jai and Bua Jiao, and thank you again for your hospitality and the opportunity to meet with you and learn about your community here. Thank you.